What does forest logging in Congo have to do with the growing camel population in Mogadishu and shrinking seagrass meadows in Portugal's Algarve region? The answer to that question and others is coming up in the next 30 minutes. Welcome to Echo Africa. I am Chris Alems, reporting from Lagos, Nigeria.
And I'm Sandra Twinovideo. Hello from Kampala, here in Uganda. Hi there, Chris. I can name at least one thing that ties those issues together. They all are related to dramatic ways our environment is changing. Also on the show this week, what the Democratic Republic of Congo is doing to stem river pollution, and how the country's environment minister is trying to protect the country's vast forests.
One symptom of climate change is that droughts are becoming longer and more frequent. According to the World Meteorological Organization, drought has claimed over 650,000 lives worldwide in the last 50 years. Livestock keepers are especially threatened by droughts. Goats, cows and camels can't survive without water. In Somalia, some camel herders have found success by bucking tradition.
It is breakfast time at the Beda camel farm on the outskirts of the Somali capital, Mogadishu. One or two animals have found something to chew on, but they are all pretty hungry. All eyes are on the activity at the edge of the enclosure, and the heaps of freshly cut grass, leaves and twigs. Tasty morsels for the ungulans, but also vital to their health. There is nothing to graze on this sandy ground. Hassan Abdirahman Sabriya is the farm manager. A herd this size typically has more room to roam, but space here is limited. You face so many challenges when you bring camels to the city. The animals need to be trained to live on this small area. That requires a lot of patience and experience. The other challenges are finding enough food for the camels in the city and ensuring they are provided the things they would get from the desert. Finally, the gate is opened. Here in the enclosure, there is more than enough for everyone. That wasn't always the case when the herd had to scrounge for food out on the open plains, just as camels here have done for centuries. When the drought struck the countryside where camels traditionally live, there was nothing to graze on and a shortfall of rain. It forced us to move our animals here to the city. Somalia is one of the countries hit particularly hard by climate change. Persistent drought is slowly destroying the traditional grazing lands. The vegetation is dying back and water holes are drying out. Even camels, which can survive long stretches on very little, are dying from thirst or hunger. The despair felt by Hussein Ibrahim Hussein and other herders is growing by the day. Their flocks are shrinking. The camels simply cannot find enough to eat in the bushland of the lower Shabelle region in eastern Somalia. We herders talk a lot about how to get our camels away from here and find new grazing areas because it hasn't rained in so long. Drought is everywhere. If it gets worse and we can't feed our camels, we'll have to abandon them and go to the city to save our children and ourselves. Many Somalis are moving to the capital to escape the effects of climate change. Mogadishu's population has doubled to 2.4 million people over the last 20 years. It was in that growing market that Hassan Abdirahman Sabriya recognized an opportunity. Another reason we brought our camels to the city is to provide fresh milk to the people who live in Mogadishu and its surrounding areas. In the past, people have to go to rural areas to get it. Now we can deliver it freshly milked right here in the neighborhood. Milking is done every day at the Beda camel farm, much to the displeasure of the young calves. But business takes precedence. We sell 1 liter of our camel milk for $2. We normally produce 900 to 1,000 liters of camel milk every day. If demand is high, we increase our milk production to meet the needs of our customers. The fresh milk is immediately loaded up and taken to the city. Restaurants and hotels are important customers. Camel milk is very nutritious and packed with vitamins, making it popular not just in Somalia. With business booming, the Beda camel farm can afford to buy concentrate feeds for the animals. It's an important way of making up for drought-related food shortages. Bringing the camels to the city has turned out to be a good move, but not everyone can afford to do the same. So instead, Hussein Ibrahim Hussein plans to move on with his camels in the hope of finding enough food and water elsewhere.
Water is a precious resource. It's essential for our survival. So why do we waste so much of it? Now think about the mighty Congo River in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's one of the world's deepest rivers. Millions of people depend on it for their livelihoods. But it's been polluted at an alarming rate due to poor waste disposal, as we'll see in the capital, Kinshasa.
More rubbish than water. That's the state of almost all of the Congo's tributaries in Kinshasa. And every day, the mountains of waste continue to grow because almost everyone disposes of their rubbish along the small rivers and drainage canals that crisscross the city. Organic waste and plastic bottles suffocate life in and around the water and clog the waterways, causing severe flooding during the rainy season. It's a situation that horrifies Alain Sebela. After learning about the damage caused by plastic waste in his meteorological science course, he founded an environmental NGO.
The rivers in Kinshasa are polluted with runoff from industries and plastic waste. We plan to clean up the rivers by collecting plastics, which are then turned into art objects. I intend to start a business that will help to protect the rivers.
And he's using a lot of imagination to do it. Alain Sebela knows his initiative can't solve Kinshasa's overwhelming waste problem. But he sees the decorative objects made from the plastic waste as a step towards raising awareness of environmental problems. Decades of conflict, a rapidly growing population, and a lack of investment have all contributed to the city's failure to develop a functioning water and sanitation system for its 15 million inhabitants. In 2019, the government launched the Kin Bobeto project aimed at making Kinshasa cleaner and greener. On the last Saturday of every month, Kinshasa's citizens are encouraged to clean up their neighborhoods. 300 trucks are deployed to collect garbage and transport it to landfills on the outskirts of the city where it's burned. Still, the project only scratches the surface. According to official figures, the city produces 7,000 tons of plastic waste every day. But environmental activists like Alain Sebela are undeterred by the task ahead of them, even if it has to be removed one sack at a time.
Our next report also comes from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which is home to the second largest rainforest in the world after the Brazilian Amazon. Lush tropical forest covers about 60% of DRC for now.
That is right, Chris. It is disappearing fast. Over 15 million hectares have been cleared in the last 20 years. Partly due to the dubious license agreements, but these forests are valuable carbon sinks, valuable not only for the DRC but for the global climate. EcoAfrica spoke to the country's environment minister to find out what is being done to tackle this problem and others.
Here in the Democratic Republic of Congo, the best way to protect forests would be to provide more people access to electricity. And not just private households. Communities on the whole need alternatives to burning wood for energy. That would include small and mid-sized businesses. I can't simply go back to the village where I was born and tell folks there, stop chopping down trees, stop burning wood. They must be given an alternative. We're waiting on funding to implement the change that will allow us to develop land for large-scale productive agriculture. At the moment, just 14% of the Congolese population have electricity. We can increase that to 70% through solar power generated by the sun that shines above us, but also from biomass and wind power. That should go a long way towards protecting the forests. Must we here in the DRC sacrifice ourselves and refrain from exploiting our oil reserves for the good of the environment? What do we get in return? Because if we choose to protect the environment, that's not only good for the DRC, it's good for the whole world, since forests store CO2 emissions and help preserve biodiversity. If someone makes us an offer, we can weigh up our options. If the deal's right, we can say, OK, oil, stay in the ground, we don't need to exploit you, we have other funds, other means of survival. But without an alternative, we can't afford to pretend we don't know it's there. We must quite simply act in good conscience. We know there's a problem with pollution, and we know that forests can absorb those carbon emissions. That's reason enough to preserve and protect them. The global north, the wealthy industrialized countries, the G20, as well as the newly rich, possess 80% of the world's GDP. They have the means to do something. It requires a willingness to comprehend, to realize that if we don't take care of our forests, all the industrialization in the world will lead us nowhere. Because if temperatures rise by 3, 4, 5 degrees Celsius, we'll all cease to exist.
In Portugal's Algarve region, researchers are investigating how seagrass meadows can be protected and the benefit that could have in terms of reducing the effect of climate change.
For conservationists, seagrass meadows are heroes of the ecosystem. Home to many different species, they grow in shallow coastal waters and harbor huge benefits for life underwater and on land. That's why a team of scientists is studying the meadows of Portugal's southern Algarve coast. Today, the team is preparing to dive down to the seagrass beds of the Ria Formosa lagoon to collect sediment samples. In a time of climate crisis, Carmen Santos' research is more crucial than ever. For months to come, she and her team will be coming back to the lagoon. Each trip usually spans several days. The fieldwork includes mapping the approximately 10% of wetland that's covered by seagrass, which is one of the lagoon's most valuable assets.
They are very efficient carbon sinks, which means that they can sequester and store a huge amount of carbons in their biomass and in the sediment behind where they grow. And this is very important because when sequestering the CO2 and the carbon that is stored in the sediment, they are helping us to mitigate the climate change.
Scientists estimate that coastal ecosystems like seagrasses store 3 times more CO2 than forests, at no cost. Carmen Santos and the team from the Algarve Center of Marine Sciences want to find out exactly how much of this blue carbon is stored in Ria Formosa. They've taken about 80 sediment samples over the past 3 years. They slice up the samples and then analyze them. By burning them, the scientists can calculate the amount of carbon they store. The team hope that their research will convince policymakers that seagrasses need more protection because of their potential to absorb CO2. Their insights could also help on the local level in coastal development planning, and on the global stage, the findings could aid efforts to reach climate neutrality goals. Seagrass meadows worldwide are under threat from the incessant traffic of boats and damage caused by anchors.
In Europe, since the 60s, we have lost 1/3 of the seagrass meadows that we have. One of the major threats to seagrasses is the amount of boats that we have, because first they travel very fast, which creates big waves that hit the margins of the channels and erode the coastal, the sediment where the salt marsh and the seagrass are growing.
Water pollution also threatens seagrass species around the globe. Stricter legislation has served to improve water quality in Ria Formosa, which in turn has helped seagrass beds to recover. And that's benefited one of the lagoon's most iconic inhabitants, the seahorse. Their numbers have dropped by more than 90% in recent years, primarily due to illegal fishing and the destruction of their habitats. Protective zones and artificial structures like these have been set up to help. Seahorses need something to cling on to. Jorge Palma is the driving force behind the Seahorse project. He's studying the relationship between the animals and seagrass as well.
Those areas are highly productive in terms of food and as an habitat. And even if the seahorses don't use it directly, it will use it indirectly as it produces the food that later on they will feed on, like small shrimp, the small amphipods and all they eat.
Food that is also provided by the ponds at the research station where Jorge Palma works. It's feeding time for the seahorses that the team breed here. Palma has been studying them since 2007. Some of them will be released into the waters of Ria Formosa. It's a start. Hopefully it won't be a futile measure to support what's left of the current population. Carmen Santos and her team planted seagrass in the summer. Now they're trying to track it down to see if the plants survived. Though cameras can't capture them, divers can spot them with their naked eyes.
Few days doing this, and it's great to see that it works. So we'll see how it happens in the winter, and hopefully it goes well, and we can see the plants growing and spreading.
Across the globe, conservationists are focusing on replanting seagrasses, like here near the Spanish island of Majorca. It's tedious work. The young plants are sensitive and the growth is slow. But recent studies point to a reversal of the decline of seagrasses in Europe, a sign that protection and restoration efforts can make a difference.
According to a recent study by the aid organization UNICEF, worldwide, more than 1.4 billion people live in areas with high water insecurity. Among them are 450 million children. That is one reason why an initiative here in Uganda is making filters available in schools and the private households to bring clean water closer.
This is the Naki Valley refugee settlement in western Uganda. 130,000 people live here. 6 years ago, Dina Nabintu fled the Democratic Republic of Congo after rebels killed her husband. In Naki Valley, the lake is the source of water, also for drinking, for livestock as well. But the water is full of germs. Every year, 20,000 children under the age of 5 die in Uganda of diarrheal disease. One major reason is that they have no choice but to drink dirty water. Heat kills germs, so Dina Nabintu boils the water she fetches from the lake. She has 5 children.
We boil drinking water using charcoal, and if we don't have it, we use firewood. Otherwise, we would be drinking very dirty water.
That comes at a cost to the environment. To make charcoal, trees are cut down. Forest also had to be cleared to make space for the settlement. But there's another way to provide safe, clean drinking water. Sauda Birungi and Henry Othieno run Tusa Fisha, a social enterprise that makes automated, low-cost filters. This setup cost $1,200. The money was donated by somebody in the United States. It supplies enough water for about 900 people out of 130,000 in the settlement. But it's still a start.
The water that passes through our filter is the water from the lake. You can see this is the original water from the lake. And then after it passes through the filter, this is the result that we get.
Sauda Birungi lost a brother to cholera. He drank contaminated water. Access to clean water is a human right. Tusa Fisha aims to deliver what the state fails to provide. It also developed a small water filter for home use.
It uses granite to purify the water. We have 2 buckets. The top bucket contains the granite, and then the lower bucket is a reservoir for the safe water. So they pour water on the top bucket, and then the whole filtration happens in the granite. Only water and air can escape through the granite, and only safe water goes into the reservoir for safe water down.
Othieno shows people how to put together their own water filter. The granite needs to be cleaned every few months. Then it can be reused. Dina Nabintu is intrigued. If you filter water this way, you no longer have to boil it or buy charcoal, which means lower emissions and costs. And there's another advantage.
Every time we install an institution filter, we train the women around the community to make sure that they have access to safe drinking water in their homes. They can also go and train other people or also make these water filters, then sell them to earn an extra income for themselves.
Sauda Birungi and Henry Othieno installed the first large filtering system using granite in central Uganda, in a school near the capital, Kampala. Several hundred pupils now have access to clean water and fall sick less often.
This water is safe, doesn't have anything, so it has helped me a lot because I'm no longer suffering with typhoid. One day even I was suffering with typhoid and I was like, I don't even go to school.
Tusa Fisha has quantified the impact that use of its filters has on the environment in terms of trees protected and CO2 emissions.
In a year, we save the atmosphere of at least 240 tons of carbon dioxide for each filter and moringa trees that we plant.
Whenever Tusa Fisha installs a large filter system in a school, the team plants moringa trees with the pupils, about 1,000 in all over the past 2 years. At Nakivale, Dina Nabintu has since acquired and started using a water filter. She put it together herself.
The water from the filter is clean and usable. I'm very surprised that this is the same water which was originally dirty after cows and people had contaminated it.
Thanks to the Tusa Fisher filter, she and her family stand a better chance of staying healthy with less effort and at lower cost. However dirty the water in the lake continues to be.
That's it from us today. We hope you enjoyed this week's show. If you've got any thoughts or ideas about environmental protection that you'd like to share with us, please do get in touch via our social media platforms. For me, Sandra Twinobdio, it is a goodbye from Kampala here in Uganda.
See you soon, Sandra. It's goodbye from me too. Wishing you all a wonderful festive season. Take care and stay safe. I'm Chris Alems, signing off from Lagos, Nigeria.